Today we're going to rank all 20 teams in the 2026 World Baseball Classic, and there are some amazing teams in this tournament that are absolutely stacked, but there is a huge gulf between those top teams and the bottom teams. So let's start off all the way down at the bottom with our number 20 team in the tournament, Czechia. And just to give you an idea about how good Czechia is, their best player in the 2023 tournament was an electrician whose fastball tops out in the high 70s. Their best pitcher in Czech League history is this guy here, Martin Schneider, whose day job is being a firefighter. He throws 83 miles an hour and is about to turn 40 years old, and he might be the ace of the rotation. So yeah, as you can guess, the Czech roster is just filled with guys like that. Only one guy on their entire team has MLB experience. That is this guy here, Taran Vavra, and he has played in exactly one game for the Orioles last year before being released. The large majority of players on this team play in the Czech League. As you can see here, 21 of the 30 guys. That does mean you've got some guys in other levels. This guy here is in JUCO. This guy here plays at Northeastern. This guy's D2, this guy's D1. But outside of some college guys, this team does not have a lot of high-end professional experience. This is basically like if you just rassled up all the best high school players from your nearby counties that were like sort of good enough to play at college. That's definitely not great, but there's also really something fun about that. It's basically just like you and the boys are going out there against Otani and Yamamoto, and you're just seeing what you can do. That sounds like an absolute blast, and you've got to root for that. I hope Czechia does awesome in the tournament, but without a doubt, I am putting them in the bottom tier. Next up, and maybe slightly better than Czechia, is Brazil. They are back in the tournament for the first time since 2013, and their roster has a real hodgepodge of guys. I mean, they looked in every little corner of the world to bring in some interesting players here, and we'll start with Bo Bichette's brother, Dante Bichette Jr., who hasn't played organized baseball since 2019, and he may or may not have long yellow hair. You've also got Manny Ramirez's son, Lucas, who just turned 20, and he had an okay year in rookie ball last year. And speaking of young players, they found a high schooler in Georgia who's only 17 years old. He throws 98. So they're like, yeah, why don't you come on board? So Jose Contreras is here as well. And here's a look at all the different leagues that the Brazil players come from. This is totally different from the Czechia roster, who had everybody from the Czech League. I mean, look at all these different leagues here. This is crazy. But despite all that variety, the talent level here is just so low. And just to give you an idea about what I mean, their cleanup hitter is probably going to be Leonardo Reginado. He doesn't even start for his Mexican League team, and that Mexican League team is one of the worst in their conference. So that's who one of their best hitters is. And another strike against Brazil is that at least the Czech teams all know each other and they have great chemistry and an identity. This roster feels very patched together, so you kind of worry about how Brazil's going to come together in the tournament. But that being said, I think the talent is just a little bit higher here than with Czechia, so that's why I'm going to give them the slight edge, but they are definitely still in the bottom tier. So to round out our bottom tier, we've got two more teams here that I think are definitely bottom tier, and that is Australia and Nicaragua. And really at this point, we're just getting into a discussion of how good each country's league is. And these two are generally considered to be around A-ball level. And just to give you a reminder about how the minor leagues work for Major League Baseball, your A level is at the bottom. This is for a lot of your really young, raw players. These guys here usually have lots of talent, but not a lot of control. So they maybe throw hard, but they can't find the strike zone, or they hit the ball hard, but they strike out a lot. This is usually right where all the best D1 players go right away. So Gage Wood just pitched a no-hitter in the College World Series. He got fast-tracked immediately to A-ball once he got drafted. So this is about the level that these two teams are at. And we can see that by looking at the Australian League stat leaders from last year. We can see one of the best hitters was Devin Saltabon. He tore up the league. Look how good these stats are. So he's got to be a top prospect or something, right? Well, Saltabon is in low A for the Phillies, and he's their number 16 ranked prospect. So he's not really even a notable prospect, and yet he's one of the best players in this league. So that's why I say they're probably around A level, and most of the players on these teams play in these leagues. Now, each of these teams does have a little bit of MLB talent. So Australia has Curtis Mead and top prospect Travis Bazzana, so that's cool. Nicaragua has Mark Vientos, who's a bona fide major leaguer, and then Freddie Zamora, who's a prospect for the Brewers. That's already way more than what Czechia and Brazil have. Nicaragua does have more MLB minor leaguers. They have 5 to Australia's 3, but they actually did really good in the 2023 World Baseball Classic. They beat Korea 8-7. They made it to the knockout round where they barely lost to Cuba 4-3. So definitely don't count Australia out. But yeah, unfortunately, these two teams just don't have a lot of high-end talent relative to the rest of the tournament. So that's why I'm putting them firmly in the bottom tier. Okay, and next up, we've kind of got the okay tier. These teams might have a few major leaguers, but the rest of the team is made up from guys from like medium level leagues around the world. So for example, we have Colombia, who has Jose Quintana as their ace. He is a real major league pitcher. And then they've got guys like Elias Diaz, Donovan Solano, and Gio Urshela, guys that are sort of major league adjacent. And then the rest of their team is made up of guys from medium level leagues around the world. So here we go. Here are all 6 teams in this tier. It is Colombia, Israel, Great Britain, Cuba, Netherlands, and Panama. All 6 of these teams seem pretty close to me. Again, they just have a few major leaguers. The rest of the roster is sort of meh level for this tournament. So I needed a way to sort of separate them. So I created a pretty crude ranking system. And again, this is not perfect or anything, but basically if you play in one of the lower medium level leagues like Cuba, Colombia, Single A, that player is worth 1 point. If you're in Double A or the better Latin American leagues, you're worth 2. If you're Triple A, Japan, Korea, or we're sort of just in the majors, but you're currently a free agent, kind of like Elias Diaz, you're worth 3. If you're in the majors, you're worth 4. And then if you had an OPS plus or ERA plus above 100, meaning you're above average statistically, you are worth 5 points. So again, not a perfect system by any means at all. All I'm trying to do is just sort of give a rough snapshot about where the team's talent level is at. So here's what I found, and oh my goodness, we have a clear winner. It is Panama. Their depth is really good. They have 7 guys here who are on MLB rosters, and then they have an additional 8 guys in AAA, and then there's even more depth on top of that. They got a few guys in Japan and Korea, and then 10 guys in Mexico, which is clearly a top 10 league in the world. I hesitated with them because they only have 2 above average major leaguers, but their depth is clearly head and shoulders above the rest here in this tier. After them, you've got Colombia and Israel. Both of those teams have really solid depth, as well as having a handful of real major leaguers. Next up, you've got Great Britain, and yes, they have Jazz Chisholm, which is awesome, but their depth is just a little bit lighter. And then you've got Cuba and the Netherlands. Those 2 teams are pretty top heavy. Now, Cuba does get penalized here, as most people consider the Cuban league to be a bit lower than like Mexico, Venezuela, so that definitely hurts their points here. And then with the Netherlands, yeah, the Dutch league is considered definitely lower tier, probably in the same realm as the Czech league, and that's most of the roster, so that's why they are penalized. So pretty much that's exactly how I'm going to rank them, but you can definitely feel free to put these 6 teams in any order. I would just probably say that Panama is the best. Okay, before we move on to the upper tiers, there is one more team in this tier that I haven't mentioned yet. They're kind of a special case, and that is Taiwan. So here's Taiwan's roster, and you're not going to find a lot of major leaguers here. In fact, only one guy here is on a major league roster right now, and that is Sung Chae Cheng. So you might be wondering, why do I have them up this high? Well, Taiwan is a special case for a few reasons. Number one is that the Taiwanese league, which is where a lot of these guys play, is one of the fastest improving leagues in the world, to the point where most experts would probably say it's around the level of the Mexican league in terms of talent. So the base is just really high here. And then number 2, they have a lot of great prospects on this team, both in the majors and also in Korea and Japan. I'll just highlight a few of these guys here, but all of these guys have played in international tournaments and have performed well. Wei Yen Lin and Hao Yu Lee are 2 really good prospects, but Yu Min Lin is also awesome. Josie Su is currently in one of the Asian leagues. He's awesome. And then reason number 3, Taiwan has been on a burner in international play. So in 2024, Taiwan made it all the way to the championship of the second biggest international tournament for baseball. That's called the Premier 12. They took on almost a full-force Japanese team. Japan didn't have Otani and Yamamoto, but they had all the NPB guys, and Taiwan beat them. They actually shut them out in that championship game. And then in 2025, this Taiwan team took on a full KBO team, and they beat them. So they've beaten some legit teams and have some really good talent on this squad. Clearly, they play very well together. So when you add that up, I feel like that definitely elevates them up to this tier, but I can't rate them much higher than this because once you get beyond this tier, you're going up against some serious MLB talent, and that is a whole different ball game, no pun intended. So I know this might be a hot take, but I'm going to slot them in right after Panama in this group, just outside the top 10. Okay, so we're over halfway there. That is the bottom 11 teams. And now the top 9 teams are really fun and have some really good talent. So we'll start off this next tier with a team that could be way higher on this list, and that is Puerto Rico. Unfortunately, their team has been slammed by insurance issues. So guys like Carlos Correa, Francisco Lindor, and Javi Baez have all been blocked from playing, which is really too bad. Apparently, there's a rumor that that Bad Bunny himself even tried to pay their premium so that they could play, but unfortunately it couldn't get done in time. But still, we've got some serious players on this team, and it is a big step up from the previous tier. So Heliot Ramos might be the best bat here, but then we've got Martin Maldonado, we've got Rivera, we have Castro, Nolan Arenado is playing for Puerto Rico, Eddie Rosario, MJ Melendez, and Christian Vasquez. That is 8 guys in the lineup who are either right at that MLB level or were just on a team last year. That is great. The rotation's a little bit shaky though, so you got Seth Lugo as your ace. I view him as kind of like a very fine number 3 or number 4 starter. Last year he was slightly below average, but then he had a 137 ERA plus in 2024, so he's not too far removed from that. Another guy in the rotation is Jose De Leon, who's sort of been in and out of the majors, but he played a bit last year, so that's good. And then you've also got the Yankees' number 2 prospect, and that is Elmer Rodriguez. He's actually the number 59 prospect in baseball. This dude throws gas, as you might expect. He had a pretty good year in AA last year, so this rotation is definitely a lot better than like the Netherlands, but it's not going to be as strong as some other teams. But I will say that the bullpen's pretty solid. So you've got Edwin Diaz, one of the better closers in baseball. He's holding down the fort. You've got Fernando Cruz, who's a solid MLB reliever. Rico Garcia is on the Orioles, another solid arm. And you got Jorge Lopez and Giovanni Moran. Both of those guys were in the majors last year, so that's 5 solid arms to build on. And I mean, when you look at this team overall, this is clearly a step above the last tier. But yeah, the competition is just going to start to really pick up here, so that's why I have them at number 9. A team that I think is slightly better than Puerto Rico is Italy, who is my number 8 team, and they're really not a very Italian team at all. As you can see here, only 3 of their players are native born. That is only 10%. This is mostly just a lot of American dudes who want to play in the tournament. But I mean, this lineup is really young and explosive. I just love this lineup. So you've got Vinny Pasquantino, you've got Jack Caglione, one of the best prospects in baseball. You've got Kyle Teal and Jacob Marcy, 2 very exciting young players. And then you got guys like Dominic Canzone, Miles Mastroboni, and John Birdie, who are all solid major league contributors. That is a fun, fast, and powerful lineup. I'm very excited to watch them. And the rotation is really not bad at all. So your ace is Aaron Nola. And I know Aaron Nola had a bad year last year, but basically every year before that, he's been a borderline all-star. So I think this is a pretty good get by Italy. They've got Michael Lorenzen as the number 2 starter. And yeah, Lorenzen's not flashy or anything, but he's definitely clearly an MLB starting pitcher. So that helps a lot. And then Angels prospect Sam Aldegheri is in there as the number 4 pitcher. He's a solid prospect for the Angels who's already pitched a little bit in the majors. So I really think that's a solid rotation compared to some of these other teams that we've seen. They will definitely be able to hold down the fort. And really, they've got a solid bullpen in place. Greg Weissert is a really underrated reliever for the Red Sox. He'll be the closer. You've got Gordon Graceffo, good prospect for the Cardinals, and then Dan Altavilla and his glorious goatee. I mean, really, up and down, this is a solid team. The lineup's pretty young and exciting. I think this is definitely a team to keep your eye on. They could maybe overperform a little bit, so excited to see what Italy can do. Definitely putting them up here in this tier. Okay, at number 7, we've got a team that really underperformed in the 2023 tournament, and that is South Korea. They didn't even make it out of the group stage, which is crazy. They actually lost to Australia, which was a huge upset. The thing that's interesting about Korea and what makes them kind of hard to compare them to the other teams is that they don't have a ton of major leaguers. Almost all of their players are in the KBO. But fortunately for them, the KBO is considered to be the 3rd best league in the world, right after the majors and Japan. And yeah, this is basically a team of KBO all-stars, so that's really cool. Leading the charge, you've got Jung-Hoo Lee and Haesung Kim, both of whom absolutely dominated in the KBO and then came over to the majors. But you've also got the 2024 KBO MVP, Do-Young Kim. Look at his stat line. He was a monster just 2 years ago. You've got HM An. He's only 21 years old, but he kind of had like a Nick Kurtz-like season last year. He hit 22 home runs in just 112 games. This dude can absolutely mash. And I'll just throw a few other names for you up here with their stat lines. These are just great Korean hitters up and down the lineup. And just to give you a reference, Jung-Hoo Lee and Haesung Kim dominated the KPO, and then they put up 95 and 110 OPS plus in the majors, which is right around average and above average. So if other guys can continue that level of success, it wouldn't be a stretch to assume that these KBO guys could be bench guys over in the majors, if not really great hitters in AAA. So I like the lineup. And the pitching staff is basically almost entirely Korean. You've got Dane Dunning as sort of the only MLB guy here. And let's be honest, he didn't have a great season last year. So again, this is really just a test of how good the KBO is. And I think since it's the KBO All-Stars, I really think they're going to be a tough out. I mean, we know that Japan always plays a little bit better because of their cohesive identity. I expect Korea will do the same this year. And their group is pretty easy. So I expect Korea will get out of that and they'll hope to make a run after that. Another team that is really close to Italy and Korea, in my opinion, is our number 6 team, and that is Canada. Check out this lineup here. I mean, this is an absolutely stacked group compared to what we've seen so far. These guys are all basically MLB starters, and there is a ton of talent in here. Obviously, Josh Naylor's awesome. Tyler O'Neill's pretty good. Owen Casey is a blue chip prospect. He's going to be a good player for a long time. You got a couple great defenders out there with Otto Lopez and Denzel Clark. Jared Young's a lot of fun. So yeah, I think this is a legit major league lineup. And one thing that I think helps this team is the rotation. The quote-unquote ace of this squad is Jameson Taillon. He had a 3.68 ERA last year. Definitely a solid pitcher. You've got guys like Michael Soroka and Cal Quantrill, guys that are more like number 4 or number 5 starters. But again, they are solid major leaguers. And then you got James Paxton back in the mix. He is just 1 year removed from a 4.40 ERA. He didn't play last year, but man, when you put these 4 guys together, you have 4 legit major league starters in your rotation. That is a big deal in this tournament. It is typically hard to find pitching. The bullpen's where I maybe have a little bit of concern. So Rob Zastrinsky, he's pretty low on the Brewers pecking order. The next best 2 are probably Eric Sarantola and Adam Macko, 2 guys that are sort of like fringy major leaguers but aren't on a roster right now. And then you got some AAA guys after that, but yeah, I mean, compared to other teams in this tier, this is not the strongest bullpen. But I absolutely love the lineup. I love the rotation, and that's why I've got them just a tick above Italy and Korea. But again, similar to some of these other tiers, you could really put these 3 in any order and I wouldn't be mad. Okay, only 5 teams to go, and this is our last team before we get into the crazy Monstars tier. But this team is still really, really good. Coming in at number 5, we have Mexico. And you will notice the tick up right away here with this lineup. I mean, you got 4 All-Stars right here with Arozarena, Duran, Kirk, and Aranda. Those are 4 of the very best players we've seen out of all these teams combined so far, and they're all going to be in the lineup one after another, so that is really cool. And then look at some of these other guys. I mean, Alec Thomas, Joey Ortiz, Nick Gonzalez. This is definitely the most balanced lineup we've seen so far. Every single one of these guys are major leaguers. But the thing that is really scary about Mexico is their bullpen. They've got arguably the best closer in the whole tournament, and that is Andres Munoz. He absolutely dominated in the majors last year. He will be really scary to face. You've got Victor Vodnik, who's sort of like a closer setup man for the Rockies. And then you got Robert Garcia, same thing for the Rangers, sort of like sometimes closes, sometimes sets up. Either way, these 3 are really, really tough. If it's a close game in the late innings, I feel about as good with these 3 as anybody else. But again, the rotation is just not quite as good as some of the upper tier teams. Their ace is going to be Taiwan Walker. You know, you don't feel great about Taiwan Walker, but again, he's solid. You've got Javier Assad, you've got Taj Bradley, and you got Jose Urquidy. So these are all major leaguers. Nothing really fancy out of these 4, but again, pitching is really hard to come by, so this could be a lot worse. I love that lineup. I love the bullpen. They've got a ton of stars on this team, so I could easily see Mexico making a championship run. I considered putting Mexico up in the top tier, but in my opinion, they're just a little bit below some of these top 4 teams, and you're about to see why in a second. So yeah, it really feels like there is a big 4 in this tournament, and it is really hard to rank these top 4, but I think I feel pretty good about my ranking. So coming in at number 4, I'm going to go with Venezuela. And if you thought that Mexico's lineup was good, take a look at this group here. Oh my goodness. This group is absolutely stacked. And maybe at first glance you might say, I think that's pretty even with Mexico, but I'm going to put them side by side here. I'm going to put each player's OPS plus from last year on the spreadsheet. Again, not a perfect stat, but it just sort of compares your overall hitting compared to the rest of the league. And as we can see, Venezuela's lineup is clearly superior to Mexico's. Almost every single guy on the Venezuela side is above 100, which means they are above average. Just such such a deep lineup, so many great players to work with. And they also have Ronald Acuna Jr., who is always an MVP candidate. Like, if this was a major league team, this might be the best lineup in baseball. And that is just the offense. So let's move on down to the rotation and let's introduce the two best starting pitchers we've seen so far out of all these teams, and that is Pablo Lopez and Ranger Suarez. Both of these guys were so far above average last year. They're both probably like number 2 starters at this point. Is that fair? They're both really good either way. And then filling out the rotation, you've got Eduardo Rodriguez and Antonio Senzatela. They're probably like number 4 or number 5 starters. But man, those 4, that's probably the best rotation we've seen so far. And then we've got a couple monsters coming out of the bullpen. So you got Daniel Palencia, who's the closer for the Cubs. I expect him to close here. You've got Edward Bizardo. He's the Mariners fireman. He is really good. And then you've got Jose Alvarado. He's the top setup man for the Phillies. These 3 are scary, man. They are really good. And on top of that, they've got Jose Butto and Angel Zerpa, who are 2 middle relievers. So man, across the board, this team is just so stacked. They absolutely have a chance to win it all without a doubt, especially if they're superstars like Acuna and Churio. If they can play at a superstar level, man, this is a really scary team. It was really hard to rank them in the number 4 spot, but as you'll see with some of the stats I'll show, they are just a tick below the rest. So it just keeps ratcheting up here. The final 3 teams are absolutely insane, and it is really close between these top 4. So this is maybe going to be a little controversial, but my number 3 team in this tournament is, by a hair, Japan. So obviously, yes, Japan, they are the defending champs. They were absolutely amazing in 2023. Yes, I know they have Shohei Ohtani and Yoshi Yamamoto, so don't get me wrong, they are amazing. And I'll just run down who's on the roster here. Their MLB hitters are Ohtani, Seiya Suzuki, Kazuma Okamoto, Murakami, and then Yoshida. That is a tough top 5. And then you've arguably got the best player on the planet in Ohtani. So right there, that lineup is really good. But then the rest of this lineup, you've just got a bunch of Japanese all-stars. And again, NPB is generally seen as the second best league in the world, and these guys are the very best of that league. They absolutely dominated in Japan last year. And for context, Seiya Suzuki had lines like this in his final Japanese year, and then in his first MLB season, he hit 113 OPS plus. Yoshida had a year like this, then he hit 109 OPS plus in his first season. So it's pretty fair to assume that most of this lineup would also be pretty solid in the majors, right around average level. One guy I really want to watch in this tournament, I'm very excited about, is Teoraki Sato. He's the reigning MVP. He hit 40 bombs last year, and that's with arguably Japan having a dead ball. I mean, this lineup is absolutely stacked. Do not underrate these guys. And then rotation-wise, of course, you've got Yoshi Yamamoto, one of the top 5 pitchers on the planet. He's absolutely a difference maker, although he can only do so much since starters only go about 4 to 5 innings max in this tournament since it's so early in the season, but he'll still be huge. They've also got Yusei Kikuchi, who's probably like a number 3 starter in the majors at this point. They also have Sugano, who's more like a number 5. But then you got 2 really exciting Japanese starting pitchers in Kitayama and Ito. These 2 were unbelievable last year. It was so fun researching them for this video. Ito led the league in strikeouts last year, and then Kitayama was 3rd in ERA. He had a better ERA than Tatsuya Imai, who obviously got that pretty good deal this offseason and had a ton of hype around him. So yeah, I just think this rotation is insane. I think Ito and Kitayama are going to be really good and catch some people by surprise. The bullpens may be where they're a little bit thin, so their only MLB reliever here is Yuki Matsui, who's really more of a middle reliever for the Padres. They do have a really fun potential closer in Kaima Taira. This dude is 5'8", he throws 100, and he had 31 saves last year, so he is really fun. That's pretty sick. And the rest of these guys are just all-star Japanese relievers, so again, that's pretty darn good. But yeah, why did I rank them ahead of Venezuela? So obviously I can't really put their stats side by side like I did with Mexico, but I can put Japan's 4 MLB guys here. And for Okamoto and Murakami, I'm using Fangraph's projected OPS plus. We can see are clearly above average for both. And yeah, those 4 guys are better than the best 4 guys over on Venezuela's side. And then again, if you think the rest of these guys are going to translate pretty well, considering how elite Japanese bats have fared in the MLB once they come over, I just think the lineup has a slight edge, especially when you've got Shohei Ohtani. And then you've got to rank Yamamoto really high. He's a huge difference maker. And then yeah, I'm just pretty high on these 2 Japanese pitchers. It's definitely definitely very close, but I am personally going to give the edge to Japan, especially because they always play so well in this tournament. So that's why I give the slight edge to Japan. So here we go. We only have 2 teams left. I think you know who they are. Really, in order to do this justice, I've got to put these 2 teams just side by side. You know who they are. It's the USA and the Dominican Republic. And let's just start with these lineups because these are absolutely insane. They just blow Venezuela and Japan out of the water. These are just straight up all-star teams. What's always the crazy thing to me is that the Dominican Republic only has 11.6 million people. The US has 342. So it is pretty incredible that this very small island produces so many amazing baseball players. We are really, really lucky that the DR is so committed to baseball. Major League Baseball would not be the same without it. So it is so cool that the DR has this many good players. But yeah, let's take a look at these lineups and how they compare. So obviously the best hitter out of these 2 teams has to be Aaron Judge. He is probably the best hitter in the entire world. But man, the DR just has so many stars in their lineup. Really, I think the only thing we can do here is, again, let's put the OPS plus from last year. Let's stack them up side by side. And we can see USA has the slight edge. Obviously, Judge helps a lot. But again, Cal Raleigh, Kyle Schwarber, pretty much every single one of these guys in the USA lineup is above 120. So really, really good players. The DR is awesome as well, but just USA clearly has that slight edge. And that gap gets even wider here with the rotations. This is where the USA, let's face it, the USA has probably the 2 best pitchers in the world right now in Paul Skeens and Tarek Skubal. Those 2 are just insane. To have them both in the rotation is just completely unfair. And then, oh, by the way, you've got 2 legitimate all-stars in Logan Webb and Joe Ryan. This is one of the best rotations in the history of the tournament, if not the very best ever. And then meanwhile, on the Dominican Republic side, they had some tough luck. Freddie Peralta was in this rotation, but then he just recently bowed out. They couldn't get Yuri Perez in or Luis Castillo or Framber Valdez, so this rotation is definitely a little weaker than it should be. But that being said, they still have a premier arm in Christopher Sanchez. He finished 2nd in Cy Young voting to Paul Skeens last year. He's probably the 4th best pitcher in this tournament after these 2 and Yamamoto. Again, these next 3 guys are all pretty good, but you just can't compare them to the USA's rotation. The USA's rotation is just objectively unbelievable. The bullpens, though, I think are pretty even, and both are really, really fun. These teams are just so stacked. So Mason Miller's the closer for the US. You got Bednar, Clevenger, Whitlock, Jax, really underrated arms. And then on the DR side, you've got a great closer in Carlos Estevez. Uribe had a ridiculous year last year. Uceda, Dominguez, Doval. That is such a nasty group of 5. And there's more after that. So again, USA has a slight edge, but I think those 2 are pretty even. But yeah, when you look at the lineup, when you look at the rotation, it is clear that USA has the slight edge. So that is why I am making them the number 1 team in this tournament. But the DR is still really stacked and is a great number 2. And just to clarify, I put Dominican Republic over Japan because I think the Dominican lineup is just so unbelievably good. It's basically MLB All-Stars versus Japanese All-Stars. I'm definitely going to take MLB All-Stars every day of the week. And the bullpen is just so good. And then I think Christopher Sanchez and Yamamoto mostly cancel out there. So again, a slight edge to Yamamoto, but still 2 really, really great pitchers. So that's why I'm giving the edge to the DR. But these 4 teams are all so good up here in this top tier. I think they'll be really tough to beat. But man, there are some frisky teams down here in that 4 to 9 range. I think those teams can make a run if things click. But there you go. Those are my official rankings for the 2026 World Baseball Classic. How do you feel about these rankings? Would you move anything around? Let me know down in the comments, and thanks so much for watching.